Welcome to Our Next Existence by Katie and the Chorus. I'm Katie, former technology strategist turned reluctant spiritual medium, and I channel messages from the Chorus, a group of beings just beyond our sensory perceptions who are loving, expansive, and who greatly enjoy sharing their perspective of us. Join us each week as we share and discuss their ideas about humanity's existence, purpose, and future. Concepts you can draw from to accelerate your path, expand your perceptions, and ultimately step into the flow of the universe and your life. Welcome back, everybody. I am coming to you now from a beanbag under a table in the corner of my office, wedged between the bookcases that I moved out of the way of a wall that I have suddenly decided needs to be an accent wall, and I am painting dark blue. You know, it's times like these, when there's a lot of chaos coming in, that painting a wall dark blue could seem to be a waste of time. As we talked about in the 1,000 Roads, especially as we start to realize that there's much more going on in the universe besides what we have done in the 5 senses, it can start to feel like at this transition step, 5 senses actions are basically useless. Let's take a human example, one that perhaps many of us have already lived through, which is a company acquisition or a merger or a major change at your job. Once the acquisition or the merger is announced, there is often, through the workforce, a handful of reactions in a human population. Some are surprise, some are anger, some are sadness, some are excitement, etc. What happens in the weeks following before the merger, the acquisition, or the major change is formalized can feel a lot like this 1,000 Roads concept. If you had a project you were working on and you don't know if the new structure is going to even care about all this hard work that you put into it, if you don't know if you're going to even have a job in this new structure, it can start to feel like the actions that you are taking in the old structure are useless. In both situations, the merger or the acquisition, and also the major shifts that humanity is going through right now, the question is relatively the same. Are the things that you're doing when you operate under the existent structure, under the existent balance of frequencies, utilization of your physical self, useless, or as we've said before, meaningless? Or is there something about what you are doing today, and the same as in what you are doing in that old company structure, that actually is connected to everything beyond that change? It's true. We have done much more upstream on energetic frequencies, and that those things are trickling down now into the 5 senses frequencies. It's true that we're starting to realize that we affect things in many more ways than we consciously realized in day-to-day waking life in this version of reality. It's not just moving furniture around our houses or tilling the crops or typing the words. There's so much more to us. There's so much more to the universe. And those other actions in those other frequencies have impacts here. But as we've also talked about, from the Chorus's perspective, we are bringing those energies through all the way here. Now, I know many people talk about ascension, transcendence, the rapture, awakening, whatever you want to call it, the big change that's on the horizon, as if somehow there will be a shift so great that it almost feels like an eject button where you fly off into this different reality, and so much of this is left behind. That may be a valid way of looking at it, depending on how you view change. Is what's coming so great that it dwarfs what was entirely? Or when we change, do we integrate all the things, new and old, together in a new way that generates or creates a new way of existing? The Chorus is clearly on the integration team. They view that as an allowance, which is a loving choice. And in so doing, you actually benefit from the power of everything that you are and have been. There are many, many enlightened teachers, books, channels, individuals who have talked about a shift in terms of the earth splitting. By this view, as I understand it, Earth will sort of become two Earths or a multitude of Earths, where there is one Earth that is transcending and becoming more amazing, and there is another Earth that is either staying still, staying stuck in these sort of dense frequencies, or becoming even more dense. I remember attending a couple of channeled sessions by another channeler in which audience members asked repeatedly, when is this going to happen? Because we're really tired of hanging out around these other dense individuals. We're ready for the split because we're ready to not be bothered by this horrible earth energy any longer. And we're ready for the quote unquote new earth. Now, I will not argue with this perspective because it's as valid as anything else in the infinite universe. But it does express something very interesting about distance. When we have individuals among us who are frustrated by the perceived proximity of other things from other frequencies around them, it may have less to do with what those other frequencies are expressing and more about what they are expressing in terms of their continued beliefs about distance. So let's take an example. Let's say it's a beautiful, incredible, sunshiny, perfect temperature kind of day. And you and I are sitting on a park bench in a park in the middle of a busy city. So while we are underneath an incredible tree and surrounded by beautiful flowers in this perfectly manicured park, we can also hear the sounds of cars driving around us and also see tall office buildings and city buildings in every direction. And I might say to you, it's a pretty nice park. To which you might reply, it really is. I enjoy coming here. I say, oh, do you come here often? And you say, I do. I come here on my lunch breaks and I come after work, and it's really just my place to get away. I say, oh, that's interesting. So you feel like you are far enough away from the stress of your job in this park? And you say, well, sure, I would love to just, instantaneously appear on a beach in Fiji. But since I can't do that, yeah, I think this is pretty relaxing to come here. I usually feel refreshed when I go back to the office. As we're sitting there, we hear a sort of disturbance in the distance. We hear tires screeching and voices yelling, and we hear the shattering of glass. And we look at each other sort of quizzically, and I say, what's that? He said, I don't know, maybe a car accident or something. We look in the direction of the chaotic noise and see that it's actually a group of violent protesters. Now, what they're protesting really doesn't matter in this example, but they are angry. And there are many of them, hundreds and potentially thousands. They've been making their way towards the city center and specifically this park. As they are walking, they are burning things, smashing things with baseball bats, pushing people out of the way, and in some cases, even hitting other people. You look at me and you say, come on, let's get out of here. And I say, well, that's interesting because they're over at that corner of the park and your office is at exactly the opposite corner of the park, which means they're both kind of equidistant from us right now, aren't they? And you might say, yeah, but we should still go. They're coming closer. And I said, but why do we need to leave at this exact moment if we're as far away from one thing that you considered stressful and felt like this was a great distance away to de-stress in the park? But at this distance away from that protest stress, this isn't quite far enough away to be safe. And you say, Katie, I don't know. Maybe it's because they're hurdling things and they're violent and it's a different kind of stress. It's much more intense stress. And I say, oh, okay, fair. Yep, I can see that point. And all the while, protesters are getting closer and closer and closer. And I said, well, I don't know, maybe we should sit on this bench and see what happens. I used to see what happens. See what happens when a flying broken glass bottle hits your head? I don't think so. And I say, okay, well, if it feels, inspired in any part of your system that you should get up and go right now, you should probably get up and go. But if it's a fear-based decision, I don't know, that might just bring you sort of more of that energy. And you sit with it for a second. And you say, this is really hard. This is like a life or death situation. I see what you're saying. Like, I get it, but I feel like I got to run. And I said, exactly. In life or death situations, our beliefs about distance are very strong. But tell you what, I'll put an energetic bubble around us, and you and I will be completely safe for the rest of this example. How does that sound? And you say, have you done this energetic bubble thing before? Which I assure you I have many times, tested it thoroughly, and it works for me and for others. So you agree, and we continue sitting on the bench. Now, as the group of protesters gets closer, we can see that they are very angry, very agitated, bitter, and resentful. They are destroying to destroy. They are destroying for revenge. They're not trying to make a point. They may not even know what their point is, except that they are tired of feeling as powerless as they have felt. And somehow this makes them feel stronger. The crowd is now a stone's throw away from us. And I look at you and I say, do you sense what they're feeling? And you say, God, Katie, this energy is tough. This is really hard to be around. I say, yeah, I understand. Do you feel what you're feeling? And you say, well, I guess I do, but mostly I feel fear. Okay, I get that, but you're in the bubble. You're totally safe. There's nothing of what they're doing that could impact you here. So in this bubble, what are you feeling? And you might say, well, to be honest, I kind of keep getting distracted by how beautiful this day is. I still see the trees. I see the protesters and I see what they're doing, but also look at that flowering tree behind them right there. I say, yeah, I see it too. And you say, and I know they're yelling right now and they're hollering, but I bet over the sound of their hollering, you could still hear those birds singing. And I don't know, I just found myself looking at the sky and the skyline. And I say, well, that actually makes a lot of sense because you are taking in more of different frequencies than they are. You can be aware of their protest and their anger and all of their energies, but you can also be aware of a great deal more. And do you know what's incredible about that? And you say, what? I say, well, when we're aware of different frequencies, that actually means we can choose between them consciously. And then I point to the crowd and I say, do you think any of them are aware of other frequencies right now? And you say, no, probably not. They seem pretty consumed by their anger. And I say, I agree. That's a place you and I used to be too. And now the protesters are getting very close indeed. They are perhaps now approaching only a few feet away from our bench, and you are becoming more and more visibly nervous. You ask me again, are you sure this bubble thing works? It really, really works? Like if somebody hits it? And I say, it really works every time. And as you ask me that, one of the protesters storms right up next to the bench and throws a flaming bottle of something into the trash can that is right beside your side of the bench. As he does so and slams it down into the trash can, he is but a mere handful of inches from your knee, You look up at him with some fear, but not a lot of fear because you're in the bubble, and sort of a concern of leaning away and waiting for what he'll do next. But as if he doesn't even notice you, he storms off again with the rest of the crowd. And like water around stones, the rest of the protesters continue to flow right by us. As the crowd is continuing to move past our bench, you turn and look at me and say, "This trash can's about to catch on fire." And I say, "Is it?" And you say, "Didn't you see what that guy just threw in here? It looks like it could explode at any second." And I say, "It might, but it also might not." And you say, but why wouldn't it?" And I say, "Well, this is actually the point of this whole discussion here, was to get to this." And you say, "What?" And I say, "Yeah." And I say, "Look around you." And you see the crowd of angry protesters now in front of us pouring past, now climbing over the hedges and walking behind our bench. We are literally surrounded. And I say, "Does this feel like enough distance between us and them?" And you say, "Katie, absolutely not. If I wasn't in your bubble of trust or whatever it is I'm in right now, there is no way I would be this close to these people." And I say, "Okay. And what about the flaming bomb that's in the trash can right beside you?" And you say, "Yeah, I know. I think it's going to go. I think we got to get out of here. I don't know if your bubble is enough to handle an explosion." And I say, "So which concept of distance are you using right now? A physical expression of distance or an energetic one?" And you look at me for a second and you say, "Well, I guess a physical. I'm only feet from these protesters and I'm only inches from this trash can." And I say, "Exactly. Energetic distance from another on a different frequency does not mean that somehow from your five senses belief system complex standpoint, you generate massive amounts of distance in a physical way between you and them. It is an understanding instead of the way you energetically create your reality and all experiences within it, no matter if someone is an inch away or a galaxy away. Energetically, we are very far away from them right now. And you can feel it, not only in what you feel about the larger setting in which this is happening, but also in the sense of ease that you have in this moment. And maybe the sense of ease is coming from the bubble that I put around us, but also maybe it's because you've come this far in awakening. You've come far enough to meet someone like me and want to hang out on a park bench, and I have a bubble capability. So who manifested this? Me or you? Or perhaps both of us together? But now I'm going to slow time down to make an additional point. And I think it'll go better if it unfolds very slowly. And you say, "Yeah, what's that?" I say, "Well, the bomb right next to you is about to go off. And I think you should see what happens." So as you hear a rumbling in the trash can beside you, time suddenly slows down. Everything around us starts to move at a snail's pace, except, of course, you and I, who continue holding the conversation in a normal way. And I say, "I want you to hold still. I want you to sit where you were already sitting and watch what happens." And as the bomb explodes the trash can, you watch in awe as somehow every piece of debris flies in every other direction but ours. Even the pieces that might have nicked your head miss by an inch or two. Even the pieces that should have smashed into your knee somehow clip the edge of the bench and dash right over your knee. Even the pieces that should have exploded right across the bench and into my side somehow go a little too high, a little too wide, and miss me entirely. And as the explosion finishes, and we watch as people all around us in the protesting crowd begin to yell and run and scream, you are amazed that somehow, right where you were sitting, was exactly the right place to be to remain unharmed. As the scene continues to unfold very slowly around us, I say, how far away were you from that explosion energetically? And you say, gosh, Katie, I don't know. That was incredible. That's a miracle. How did every piece of that trash can completely miss us? Completely miss us. It is a miracle. And I say, well, I'd have to agree with you because by the course's definition, a miracle is simply a low to no probability outcome in the current belief system complex. But given the resonance that we're in right now, do you think we're really just resonating in the five senses belief system complex as it was? And you say, no way. We're in this really amazing energy bubble. And I say, yes, we are. And that energy bubble is called vibrating on a different frequency. And that frequency is so different that none of those things that represent all of the aspects of limitation that you were resonant with there can reach you here. In fact, I would wager that even if a piece of debris had hit you here, it would have resulted in some extraordinary expansion in your life. You probably would have met the love of your life at the hospital. You probably would have had a brilliant idea for your next job. You probably would have been inspired to travel the world. That debris on these frequencies will cause something very different than what it would have caused when we were hit by it on those frequencies. You are as far away from those frequencies as anything in this universe could ever get because you're not resonant there. It's that simple. You know, if we were to look at the progression of awakening, the baby steps that we might take from this limited place back out into the universe, it would make sense that one of the first steps would be to understand how to wield distance in an energetic way. And it could also be understandable that when we first started to approach these concepts, we approached it from a five senses physical kind of way. We want to leave this earth and we want to move into the new earth, meaning we should never physically see with our eyes or hear with our ears an angry protest of asleep humans like this ever again. And that is possible, and it is a valid perspective. And a great first step in this direction might be understanding how much we have energetic choices, even in the face of physical laws of reality that previously would have dictated the outcome. What else could have happened if you were 2 inches from an explosion in the five senses belief system complex? I mean, pretty slim number of outcomes, the majority of which result in some sort of harm, except for the odd miracle. The miracles are the bridge between us and a new set of possibilities that we now know are possible somewhere. Because in that instant, a miracle occurred and someone fell from a plane and survived. Someone was in a firestorm and wasn't burned. Someone was in a car crash and walked away without a scratch. These things are possible to us, which means there is a frequency where that possibility exists. And we may reach that resonance. We might go to that quote unquote place by choosing the frequency of those possibilities and those beliefs, regardless of what the outcome might look like according to any other belief system. I am giving you all now my bubble of safety. I am shooting out over the waves. Everyone has them. There's an infinite supply of these bubbles. You can put them around them whenever you wish, because these bubbles are constructed of your ability to choose different frequencies in any physical situation. You can walk through your office and have a completely pleasant time. You are on a different frequency. You can walk through a dangerous situation and come out completely unscathed. You're on a different frequency. Ultimately, will that trickle down into a five senses expression of distance? Of course. These frequencies reflect our energetic choices. But first, we are learning, we are coming to consciousness of ways of choosing and expressing distance that supersede the five senses experience of distance that we have known. Until one day, you can be standing anywhere on this planet and vibrate into those other places and see a completely different world. You can vibrate into those other frequencies and see those crystal structures and see the incredible beauty of this earth as you have never known it in this conscious living experience, in this conscious remembered experience. Because that place is not far from this place. In fact, you might be standing in the exact place of those places, just on a different frequency of it. And one more nuance that I want to add to this for the five senses parts of us that are probably going to take this message and want to know what to do. Am I saying that the next time you see a dangerous situation approaching, you should sit there and try and just energy distance your way through it? Well, if you feel an inspiration from any part of you, should that inspiration be dismissed? In the second book, I shared an experience where fear actually drove one of my actions. And ultimately, it was a thing that kept me connected here to the game in a way that I needed to. I make the subtle point that in awakening, all aspects of yourself are trustworthy and are ultimately contributing to your awakening. Whether that be an urge to run that you follow and are completely aware of following as you do so, and then awaken to more of the beliefs that drove that action, or the feelings that you might have sitting on a bench next to a person like me who offers a different kind of experience and you feel like, okay, maybe it is okay to stay. We won't get there by rejecting any parts of ourselves. Meaning those choices, that expansiveness was due to, in this example and in many others, your ability to be aware of the park, the crowd, what you were feeling expanded your ability to choose. Becoming more allowing of everything that we feel fuels our ability to choose. The same way that maybe we once thought rejecting and getting away from the icky parts of Earth was part of our ascension. Now perhaps we understand that continuing to be aware of and to allow for all aspects of the universe is the radiant fire of our ascension. And once we all understand consciously, when we embody fully the aspects of this ability to choose, we will no longer fear any of these situations, any of these disasters, any of these catastrophes, because we know that we can stand right in the middle of them and have plenty of space, plenty of distance for what we prefer. So much so that another being from a different belief system might look at us and say, "Can you believe it? They're like gods. They're invincible. These things don't even touch them." And we all will smile and say, "What an extraordinary expression of beliefs." We remember when we used to believe that too. We love you infinitely. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found these messages to be helpful. May they accelerate you on your path wherever you'd like it to go. For more information on the books which correspond to these podcast seasons, our podcast, live events, or how to get in touch with us, visit katieandthechorus.com. Thanks again. See you next time.